In this video, we are going to learn another topic which is known as feature encoding. And in this practical video, we are going to perform mean encoding technique. So let us learn about mean encoding technique and why do we need encoding at the first place. So if we go back at the top, we have the data that contains some features that are numerical and some of them are categorical. If I show our data sets to you, then so these are our observation, and here this is cancelled, which has been highlighted, is our dependent variable, and rest of them are independent variable. So we will use the independent variable which is highlighted with this yellow. See here, all of these that has been highlighted with the yellow will be used to predict something that is highlighted with this blue. So we want to predict, we want to use machine learning algorithm to perform the prediction using independent variable. Now the problem here is independent variable might be of different flavors. For example, some of them are numerical. See here, this lead time is numerical value. It is in the numbers format. See here, they are numbers. So they are the numbers and that is fine. So we can see they are already the numbers. We can use them directly onto our machine learning algorithm. Now the problem here is, although some of them are numerical data, some of them are categorical data. So some of them are not numbers, rather they are in the form of categories. Now if you remove such type of data which are categorical, then maybe this data is also important for predicting this dependent variable. So if you remove some of this data, considering that this might not be important, what if the most important attributes or the most important feature was this feature, and you just thought that this was not in numbers, you removed it, then our model might not be accurate. We might have low accuracy. So that is the reason we also need to incorporate the categorical features onto our machine learning model. But the problem here is our machine learning model is a mathematical model, and mathematical model does not work in the text. They only work in the numbers. So that means the process of converting these strings, these categorical variables, into numbers is called encoding technique. So we need to convert these strings into the numbers by some technique, so that after these are converted into the numbers, we can use these attributes also into our machine learning model. So that is the concept of mean encoding technique. So basically encoding technique have multiple varieties, but in this video we are going to talk about one of the categories of feature encoding technique, and we are going to perform a variant which is called as mean encoding technique. So let us use the mean encoding technique and convert this categorical variable into the numerical variables. So let us go back into our dataset, and I will create a new cell and I'll just make it a markdown, and this process is called feature encoding. And in our case we are going to use the encoding technique that is based on mean encoding technique. So this is a mean encoding technique. So you might have guessed we will be using mean, and we will be using mean in order to incorporate the data. So if you remember, we have these attributes right here, data that is cat. So this contains all the columns that are essential, and if I say columns, then you can see these are the columns which are categorical data set. Now we need to convert this into the numerical data. So let us do that right here. So I'll define a function which will do that, mean encode. So this will be my function that will take a data frame which will be nothing but our data cat, which in this case is the data frame that contains all the categorical variables, And next is I want to give the column which needs to be mean encoded and the mean column. So I'll give these three things to this function, and this function will return the data frame after it has been encoded. Now again, if you revise, what is the meaning of encoded? Encoded meaning is like if you convert categorical variable into the numerical variable, because machine learning model does not take categorical variable. So if you want these attributes to be included into the machine learning model, we need to convert them into the numerical data. So that is what we are going to do right here. So I'll create a dictionary, a simple dictionary, and this dictionary will perform the group by, and I'm going to group by the columns. So I'm going to group by the mean columns, in fact. So I'll first start by col. So this is the column that I need to encode, and now I'll perform mean column by which the grouping should be done, and I'll call the mean function to it, and then I'll convert it to the dictionary. So this is all we have, and after that I'll also add the column, and here I need to call a map function, and I'll show you what I have been doing just now. I'll just take the column and then I'll copy this map function and I'll pass the dictionary that has been just created. So this is the function that will perform mean encoding. Now let me show you what I mean by mean encoding, and I will just explain this line of code after we call this function. So for column in data cat, if you remember, this data cat contains these columns. So I'm going to just call these columns, and here I'm going to start from 0 to 8. So all the columns, you can see all the columns, but I don't want to encode these many things like year, month and day. So then I'll just call data cat the same data frame, and I'll call our function mean encode. So I'm going to call this function by calling each and every attributes or the column of data cat. So first of all, call value will be hotel, and the hotel will be sent to mean encode, and that will encode. And at next iteration, the value of call will be this attribute. It will be sent to the mean encode function. It will encode again. So in that way, we need to encode. Now this mean encode function takes three prime arguments. So first is the data frame itself. So what is our data frame? Data frame is data underscore cat. So this is our data frame. Of course, if you see here, this contains all the categorical variables. So we need to convert that into the numerical, and that is what we are going to do here by this function. So we pass the data frame that is initially categorical, and next I will pass the column name that needs to be like converted into the numerical one by one. And the third thing here is a mean call. So now here, what is a mean call? This is important thing. Now, by which column do you want to create a mean encoding technique? So that means taking the reference of particular column, we need to encode through the mean. For example, let me show you a simple example right here, and I'll take one categorical variable. Let's say I have the hotel, and this hotel has two unique, that is values in our example. Let's say one is resort hotel and another is city hotel. If you take the example of our own data set, then you will see in our data set also we have these hotel attributes that is categorical right here. At the beginning, you can see this contains either resort hotel or the city hotel. So this way, let's say I have another that is also resort hotel and so on. But for now, for just simplicity, I'll just take the 4 example. I have only these 4 data, let's say, and now I'm going to perform a mean encoding technique to it, and I'm going to take a reference of the attribute that is cancelled. Do you remember what this is cancelled mean? So this attribute was the same attribute that we have here at the top, which will be our dependent variable, and this will tell us if the booking has been cancelled or not. And for example, at this case, the resort that was booked has been cancelled. Let's say it has been cancelled. And at next, the city hotel has not been cancelled, and resort hotel has been again cancelled, let's say, and resort hotel has been again not cancelled, for example. Now, based on these values, we are going to take a reference now. So you can see at 1, there is a resort which has this value 1 and 1. So for group 1, that means if the hotel has been cancelled, so what is the mean of the resort here? So 1 plus 1 divided by 2, because the mean, calculate the mean. So 1 plus 1 divided by 2, so mean is 1. And what is the mean of resort or city in our case now? So what is the mean of the city that has been cancelled? So we have only one attribute, so obviously it will be the average of 1 divided by 1, so that is 1. So that has been cancelled in our case. And similarly we calculate for zeros, and we do it similarly. So in this way, taking a reference of one attribute, we are going to perform a mean encoding technique. So in our example, we can take a reference of dependent variable, and let us go down here, and I'm going to just make a reference of it. If you remember DataCat, this contains all the categorical variable. Do you remember it? All the categorical variable, and our main task is to convert this categorical variable into the numerical variable, and that is what this function will do. But now, in order to convert into some categorical variable into some numerical variable, there are different techniques. You can use dummy variables also, you can use one-hot encoder, and many things. But here in our case, we are using mean encoding technique, and in order to perform mean encoding technique, we need a reference point. Now what I'm going to do is, in our DataCat, I'm going to add one, that is cancellation. Let's say cancellation, the new variable. I'm just adding a new variable in this same data frame that we have, which is data_cat, which contains the categorical variable, and I'm going to insert is cancelled to it. If you remember, in our final data, that was refined data, we have this is cancelled. So I'm adding this is cancelled to this categorical variable so that we can take a reference of it. Now if I print our categorical variable and check how it looks like, data_cat, this is the data frame that contains categorical variable. Now it should also have this cancellation at down, because we just add it right here. And this is cancelled is the same attribute which we have right here, the dependent variable. So now taking this reference, mean column will be sent as a cancellation. So cancellation, the same attributes here, this cancellation, you can in fact copy it and paste it right here, the same name. So this will be taken as a reference to take out the mean of each of the attributes or each of these columns. That is what we are doing in this function. So this function basically takes one reference point, and based on this cancellation attribute, it is going to calculate the mean of each of these categorical variables. That is what we need. Now everything looks fine. Next thing is we can run it and let us check if everything works or not. So I'll just run this chunk of a code. Now I think everything has been converted into the numerical data_cat. Now let's see, previously if you check the data_cat, it was this chunk of the text in here which is categorical variable. Now everything should be converted into numerical. See here, all of them are numerical. Now here you can see these values are similar, because this might be the case where the is cancelled value would be the same. So for same is cancelled value, we'll assign the same value. And here you can see for is cancelled, the different value will have the different value for each of them. So in this way, we have converted the categorical variable by using mean encoding technique. It is a pretty simple technique. We don't have anything fancy over here. See here, we have the same value. If I go to the code and see here, this was the resort hotel. In the resort hotel, so hotel was resort hotel, and its value of is cancelled was 0. And here the next also is the same resort hotel, and its value was also 0. So that means this both will have the same value. If you check over there in our code, yes, this both of them has same value. So you can cross check all of them. Like for example, let's say that this is the meal. So if I check this meal, and the first attribute and the second attribute must have the meal value common, and there is, that is cancelled value also must be the same. If I go to the meal, let us check the meal attribute. See here, the first two have the same meal, that is configuration, which is BB and BB. And if I check there if the cancelled or not, see here, both of them has the same value of is cancelled. So for the same value of the attribute and for the same value of is cancelled, the value will be shared. That is what mean encoding basically does. Now using this, we can finalize our data now. So if I go here, what you can see is in our data, we have something called as, that is right here, cancellation. You can see cancellation right here. So cancellation was basically used in order to perform a mean encoding. It is just a reference point. Now after mean encoding is done, we can remove this cancellation variable from our categorical data frame or from this data cat. And you can see why we looped around these attributes only from 0 to 8. So why not beyond 8? Why not we just loop around entire column? The reason was that we don't want these attributes to be encoded also. Like see here, the year was not encoded, month and day was not encoded. So that was the reason we don't want to encode each and everything. We want only the first 7, that is column, to be encoded, and we can clearly see that has been encoded now. Now next thing is I need to remove this cancellation from the data cat because I no longer require it. I have already performed the encoding technique. Now after the encoding is done, I can remove it. So let us remove that. And if you remember, if you want to remove anything, what is the process? You can directly call the drop method, and drop method will just drop it. So I'll have this data cat and I'll call the drop method to it. And what is the thing that I want to drop? It is cancellation. This column, the name same column, that is right here. So I can just copy it and paste it right here, the same cancellation attribute or the column. And this drop should be within the column, so axis should be 1. In place must be also true. Now axis 1 represents the column, and if you give axis 0, then this represents the row. So we don't want to remove through the row, we want to remove entire column. So that was the reason I give the value 1, and in place should be true because I want to drop within this data frame. I no longer want to create new data frame, rather I want to drop the column, and the column should be in place. The drop should be in place. In fact, now if I run this, and now if you finally print our data that has been encoded, now you can see we no longer have a cancellation attribute, which was previously right here. We did the mean encoding with the help of it, with the help of this cancellation, and after we use it, we can remove it because we no longer want it. Now finally, we need to prepare our data. So I'll just give a reference here, preparing our data, because now the machine learning starts. So now if you see here how to prepare the data, if you remember initially we have this attribute which is norm features. If you see here, norm features should be somewhere here. See here, so this was the norm features, so we extracted it. Now if I just create a new column here, and what I can do is I can create a variable where I can store these norm features. Okay, I can do it right at the down also for you. So I'll say this is a number, and I'll say it is num data. This is a num data. And what is a categorical data? Categorical data is right here, data underscore cat. So this is a categorical data. And what is a norm data? For the norm data, I can just take the final data, which was our final data frame. And if you remember, we extracted the important number features previously. So I want to copy it, all the num features, and I will paste it right here. So these are numerical data. So these are numerical data. And in the case of numerical data, do we need to encode? No, because numerical data are in fact in the numbers. Why do we need to encode them? Only the encoding should be done for the categorical data. So this function should be only called for categorical data. So that was the reason we did it. And this over here is our categorical data. Now next thing is we need to merge them together. We need to just concat them now. We need to concat these two data frame, num data and cat data. And I will call this as data frame, our final data frame. I can use the pandas library to do that. I can call the concat function. And what is the thing that I need to concat? So I need to concat first of all maybe numcat, num data, or simply I can pass num data, which is a numerical data, and cat data. Cat data here means categorical data. Num data is numerical data, cat data is categorical data. We concat it. After we concat it, I need to specify, maybe I need to pass them as a list. So I'll pass it as a list, and after that I want the concatenation to be along the columns. So axis value should be given as 1. If I run this, finally data frame should be created. Let us print the newly created data frame. If I run it, then you can see all of these attributes are in numbers, and we have the final data frame finally. So you can see all of them has been converted into the numbers, even the categorical variable. And now our data frame is ready to perform the analysis, to perform some machine learning algorithm. So in the couple of videos, what we did was we found which of the numerical features were important. We did it using the concept of correlations. If you remember, we use correlation to extract the important features which are numerical. And numerical can be done using correlation, but in the case of categorical, we cannot use correlation. We need to do it manually by having some domain knowledge. And after we select the categorical features, now those categorical features cannot be used directly in the machine learning algorithm because these are in the form of text. So these text cannot be used in the machine learning algorithm directly. So we need to convert them into the numbers or numerical format. So for that we use something called as mean encoding technique, where we converted our categorical data into the numerical data, and after we did it, we finally have our data frame that looks very nice. In fact, I can just call the head function to it to check the data frame, and see here, this is our data frame, the final data frame, which looks really cleaned, tidy, and ready for any machine learning algorithm.